ladies. Welcome to Homemakers Radio and welcome to the Mance. I'm Mrs. Sherman and I have a message that I would like to share with you today and other days. You can go to my blog and subscribe and get these videos right away with the rest of the post. If you'd like to do that, you don't have to subscribe on YouTube. You can just go to my blog. And I have a method of just talking while you work, so you can take your device with you and you can clean up a room, make a bed, clean up the kitchen. I've tried to keep it to a certain amount of time so that you can get something done, but if it isn't enough, you can click on the left of my blog to the continuous play and listen to some more. Now I'm a veteran homeschooler. I've been married nearly 50 years to a preacher, been a preacher's wife, so I've got some experience that I'd like to share and some ideas. Now, of course, not everyone is the same. These are just my opinions, but it's just to keep you company while you work. You know, homemaking can be very isolating, and the reason is it's just not something you do in a group. Most of the time, if I have company, I would rather not have their help because I'm more efficient. I probably knock somebody over in the kitchen because I'm just moving all the time and I don't want them to help me. I know what I'm doing and I've got my mind set in a certain way as to how it's done most efficiently for me, and probably you do too. But it is very isolating, and in the olden days we could look down the road and there would be lights on of other homemakers because we knew they were home. It was somewhat settling, but nowadays, of course, you can spend a lifetime in a neighborhood and never see anyone because everyone's gone all the time. But we are going through a period of time when people are home now, and so some of you people who are new to this might appreciate having a little bit of company. You know, when you go every day to a school or an office or some other place of work, there are people around and your assignment is written out for you, or you know your job description. Well, at home, your job description is anything that comes up. It's everything. And you have to do everything, and the reason being that you cannot divide the work up and wait for someone else to do their job. If you have to get your job done and it requires someone else to get theirs done, there's no rules about that. So there's more freedom really at home. You don't have to wait for someone else, and in a way you can be more efficient. There's a whole subject of this that I could go into, but I won't right now. I wanted to talk to you about 3 things. So I'm sitting in this room. You've seen this room before, but I had to change it all out to a different color, mainly white, because I was using the colored cushions and other things in another room. I won't be able to show it to you today, but I will take a picture of it. And I would like to talk first about your appearance. Today I am wearing a coat dress that I made several years ago, and some of you actually helped me by sending me the buttons, because our local fabric store at the time, this was before captivity, and I would go down to the fabric store often looking for a new shipment of these buttons, and they only came one on a card, and they were about $2.50 each. Actually, the buttons cost more than the coat did to make, and I made the coat from fleece, and it's like a coat dress. I'll show you a picture of it later. And so some of you so generously sent me button. You went to your local fabric store and found the same button, and I had enough. I think looks like it took about 14, counting the ones on the back. And so today I'm going to share my teacup with you first. It had the right kind of pink in it that kind of went with this, and it's one of those Stechcall china, if that's how you pronounce it, and it's one of Gracie Bone china. I got it at Home Goods when I was out, when I was before captivity. I have been home for a long time just because I got tired of having to go different places, and I decided I wanted to get more done at home. There are always things that bothered me that I never could quite get to. A bookshelf that needed to be cleaned out, or going through things, going through my archives, and so I decided to see how long I could stay in, and it's a perfect time. I've tried to do it before, but somebody always wanted something or needed something or wanted me to go get something or go and do some errands, and so I decided that this would be a perfect time, since everyone feels that they are confined and shut down, that maybe I should just shut down and be at home. And I grew up on a homestead in Alaska where we were often in the winters rather isolated, sometimes, as much as 9 months, some of us. And I wanted to try it and see if I could get more accomplished at home, and I wanted to see if I could keep from having to think about so many things. And so I have been home since July. I guess this is my 6th month, but I still haven't missed anything out there, and I do order a lot of things. So I would like to talk about 3 things here: your appearance, your home making, and dealing with other people, which you will do at home. And I'm trying to use these little notes here, but mostly I'm going to be talking out of what I remember that I was thinking about. So the first thing I thought about today about appearance was, if you have not got your appearance taken care of, you might want to hang up and call me back and go and take care of yourself, and then come back, tune back in, and listen to the rest while you do your work. And so the appearance, in a way, is your ministry. Now, I realize a lot of people at home, they don't think that it matters because they, quote, aren't going to see anybody else. But you're somebody, and God is somebody, and your children and your family, if they're there, they're somebody too. And you'd be amazed when you think that you're alone and you think that no one's going to see you, how many people happen to come to the door that day, whether it's someone delivering a package or the mail or just anything. I was just amazed yesterday. I had quite an adventure because I answered the door, and there were 3 ladies there from a church that way across on the other side of the city, and I don't get to see them very much. And they were all dressed in red, and they sang Christmas carols to me. And so I invited them in, and I was so glad I bothered to get dressed and get my hair and skin preparation ready. I was so happy that I'd done that, because I was really thinking, well, I don't have anything really planned today. I think I could just kind of be casual. But I was so glad, and I had the table set in the tea table set. I had it all set just because it looked nice, and I wanted to look kind of festive. And I was so glad that it was there. And they brought stuff to eat, and I had gotten all the rooms fixed up, because when I have a lot of company, a lot of the grandchildren and the downline and the relatives come, and all my descendants come, it's quite an ordeal to get it all back in order again after they leave, changing everything and washing the linens and all that. So I decided, well, while I'm doing it, I'm just going to change the colors and change the rooms around a little bit. And so I invited them to a home tour. Remember, in the olden days, we used to go on historical home tours around Christmas time, and people who had historical homes would open them up, and you'd buy a ticket, and you could go from house to house on a walk and go inside and see their Christmas decorations, and it was called a holiday historical home tour. Well, they're not doing that anymore. And so these ladies were so thrilled, and they got to walk through the manse, my little cottage, and see these rooms all fixed up that weren't occupied for a little while, which is rare. And even my kitchen was clean. And they got to go in and see everything and walk around and go in the rooms and see what it all was. And they got some ideas for themselves too. And so I was quite thrilled with that. And then I wore this coat also, and I went outside and I called Mr. S. The day before. I called Mr. S. because he had been talking to me and saying, things that we don't get to celebrate anymore that go on, and things that we had missed. And he said people don't come to the door Christmas caroling anymore. And of course, the next day these ladies came and sang to me, but the day before I wore this, and I went outside and I called Mr. S on my cell phone and said there's a Christmas caroler at the door. And so he came to the door, and it was me, of course, and I sang, "God rest you, merry gentleman," so that he could say that he had a Christmas caroler at the door. And so I decided, to keep the tradition alive, at least for us, so we could be happy. And I think a lot of you are figuring out how much dependence that we have all had on other people and things that happen somewhere else. But when you are home, you learn to reproduce all the happiness in your own home. All the things that you liked out there, you can actually do in here. And so I would like to talk to you a little bit about that. But your appearance, let's go back to your appearance, because that is the start of your day. That is your start of your homemaking. And if you will not neglect it, if you'll get ready today, you're going to be so happy that you did. Even your children will feel better when their mommy is pretty, or when she looks like she's happy. I used to worry when I was raising my kids, because I homeschooled them. Am I doing enough? What kind of effect am I having on them? Are they getting enough with just their mother? And I discovered that they were happier when I was absorbed and busy, and perhaps even singing, and when I looked nice. And when I looked nice, if I neglected my appearance for several days and then I decided one day to fix myself up, one of them would invariably say, you look pretty. And so they do notice. They do notice, and they feel better when their mother looks like she feels good and like she's happy. So it is effective. And even if you live alone, I think it's very important, because it's your service, it's your sacrifice to God. And for people that live around other people, it's a ministry. Your appearance might be the only chance you get to come in contact or have a message. It's a silent message. And your appearance when you're alone is also a sacrifice to God. It's an offering. So that is really, really important. And also, a lot of you live in really nice houses. You live in very nice, beautiful homes. And I don't know why. I've often wondered, why don't you dress for it? Your house is all dressed up. Your house is so beautiful. Why don't you dress up and look nice for it? Now, I would probably not wear this to do my housekeeping, but if I wore something like this, I'd put an apron on over it, and the apron would have a pinafore type here, because this is where all the flour and the stuff gets on all the dirt. So yes, I do have an apron wardrobe. Now I want to move on to, now that we've got that settled and you've decided you're going to take care of your appearance first, I want to move on to the house and the importance of homemaking in the house, because that is also a ministry, and it is an offering to God, and it is an expression of yourself. And when the ladies went on a house tour in the manse here, they were telling me how they had not thought of using these ordinary things that as part of the decor and part of the expression. I use all old toys that I've had when my children were little. I use those. I use some of my own. I use blankets and throws of different colors and rugs, and I use books, and I use baskets, and I use things that I just rotate and use in different ways throughout the house, so I don't have to buy decor. And I use old things that people have given me. But if you can afford it, it's nice if you can afford it to fix it up nice. And so it's an offering. It's an expression of yourself too. Perhaps you're not an artist, but you can arrange things. Maybe you don't feel you have any talent or any kind of special ability, but you can clean things and you can make things neat and tidy, and that has a message and that has a feeling too. And it increases your contentment when you aren't just a housekeeper or a cleaner, but a homemaker. There's more to it. There's no more to making a home than just cleaning it. If you're just cleaning it, it can be quite miserable for you and for others. But if you're making it beautiful and you're making it comfortable, that's another thing that homemaking supply companies have made a lot of money off of, because it's so needed and so popular and in such demand. The items that actually make a home appealing and comfortable. And since people are home now more, they're finding out that home is everything. It's more important than anything. It's more important than anything out there. So they're increasing their attempt to make it nice, and starting to notice things which are convenient and things which are comforting and things which would serve them better in the home. One of the things that I did is I put a coffee and tea station in every single room except the bathroom, which I don't know, maybe somebody would do that. But in every bedroom there is a tray that has one of those automatic shut-off water kettles and uh, the cups and all the ingredients they need for hot drinks and cold drinks too. And you know, you can get tiny little bedroom refrigerators, things that people use in dorm rooms, and you can actually supply things like that in the rooms too. But what that does is it maybe somebody doesn't want to get dressed yet, but they want to have something to drink. They don't want to go into the kitchen in their pajamas. So that increases our comforts too. And so you probably have something that you have done or that you can think of that makes life better at home. And home is everything. And so I think it's important to make it as you like it so it will increase your contentment and your comfort and not make you feel trapped or restless is to continue to take care of it. So the other thing you can do that I think is really important is after you have cleaned your house, and you can find places on the web that will give you a schedule. All I do is make a list, and I know some people like to follow hour by hour schedule, but I never know when I'm going to get interrupted or when I see something as I'm doing it that needs to be taken care of immediately. And so I can't keep the hour to the exact hour. So I just put the list there and then just go back if I'm interrupted to the list. And so taking care of your house means also you can get on the web and find a list of things that are most important. So to me, the most important thing I'll write the night before is to check the kitchen, make sure that that's cleaned up, and the bathroom and the laundry, because those are the three things that require sanitation that, you know, keeps the bacteria down in your house. And so those would be my three priorities. And also so that your house will smell nice, the sweeping and things like that. And keep a list of things that you would do every day and things that you do once a week and things that you might want to do once a month and then things you do seasonally. And you can find ideas like this if you're not used to homemaking on the web. Another thing to do for as far as homemaking goes is to observe. Just to observe what needs to be done, and then you start to realize, oh, a certain time of year I have to do this, and a certain time of year I have to do that. Our problems is, I think, in adapting to homemaking is that many people have been brought up in institutions. We go to schools, we go to work, and a lot of these things are done for us while we do our particular job. But at home, you're a homemaker and a housekeeper and the cleaning lady and the cook and you're the laundry person and you're the person that takes care of small wounds and you're the person who teaches, and so you're doing it all. You have to realize that. But what you do is you make it easy on yourself by looking for ways to do things more efficiently. Now, one of the things that I think that is really important in homemaking is the attitude. If you are up with an attitude that you just really resent it and you don't want to do it, that's going to have a big difference on what you make it look like. Because you seem to we transfer our ideas, we transfer our moods into our home and into our appearance too, transfer our moods into the way we dress. I can tell back in the 80s it was real popular, starting to get real popular for young people to wear a look of rebellion, and it was black garments, and there's nothing wrong with black because it's always been worn, but it was always worn for formal things or for dignity or for solemn occasions. But it was a look of rebellion was just to wear things that were kind of edgy, and the girls were wearing black lipstick and trying to look unapproachable, I think, and because then they would cut off the generation that would be able to teach them and help them and mentor them. They would cut them off because their appearance was so almost hostile. And so we transfer, the way we look has something to do with how we're feeling. And if you have a feeling of resistance to your housekeeping, um, it's going to show. It's going to show in what you do. So when those ladies came to see me, I was so glad that I wasn't mad at my house that day because I had cleaned it up and I was happy about it. I was actually putting little touches, little bouquets of flowers here and there because I was happy about it, and I think that they were pleasantly entertained by it. So your appearance and your house are your life ministries right now, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about what you do when you wake up too early in the morning. And that happens to everybody. And I remember the first time that it happened to me. Had never ever woken up in the night and couldn't get back to sleep ever. And I was about 19 years old, and maybe I was 20. And for several nights in a row, I couldn't get to bed. I couldn't sleep. Or I'd wake up and it was dark and I didn't want to wake anybody up. And so I was thinking, why am I waking up? And one of the things that I decided to do when that happened was that there was a change that needed to be made in my house or in my appearance or in my life. Then I was going to try to find out what it was, because it's probably something that was bothering me in the back of my mind that I hadn't really faced. And so I would look for things. Do I need to change my health habits? Do I need to lose weight? Do I need to change the way I dress? Do I need to do something different in my social life? I would examine all these things. So I got in the habit of thinking about life when I woke up in the night and couldn't get back to sleep. And so wonderfully now, if it ever happens, I have the web, and so I get to look up things, and I have a list of things that I need to look up. I never have time for. I'm just busy scurrying around here trying to, keep my house and catch up on reading and correspondence. By the way, some of you have so kindly sent me cards. You won't get one back this season, but you might get one back later on. I just ran it too late. I think I sent out about 2 Christmas cards. I was just in such a crunch for other things that I had to do. So there are some things you can do. I wanted to cover this because what can you do when you wake up in the night? Okay, you can do some praying. We all know that, don't we? And then you can pray about the people that you are the most concerned about, that you care the most about, and I hope that's members of your family. I don't know, we get this media, we get the news, and we're always praying, about the world and about peace on earth and about the president and about this. But did you ever think that your family, your people, they are the ones that need most of our energy in prayer, to spend more time in it? Probably at the end of life, you will have wished that you prayed more for your own people. So pray for your own children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and your parents, because that is what is going to pay off in your life. And also, when you are gone, when you pass away, you might be the only person that is praying for someone. Let's say really that you're the only person that is praying for your husband. Maybe no one else prays for your husband or for your children. When you die, you won't be praying for them anymore. So pray for them as much as you can right now. And so then also you can look up things. And one of the things, of course, is this wonderful season and where people are observing and remembering the birth of Christ. What Mr. S. preached a sermon on those 3 gifts that the Magi brought to Christ when they saw him and when he was born. And now some people say that history shows that he was not a newborn, he was a child at the time, and I think there's some credence to that. I'll have to look that up. But those are some of the things that I'll look up in the night if I can't sleep, because there's no use just laying there. And it could be with people not sleeping, is they just don't need that sleep that night. They don't need it. And nobody stays awake forever. Eventually you will crash. You will You will get to sleep. But one of the things that I remembered in homeschool, and by the way, I'm a veteran homeschool, and I will be homeschooling you here, so I don't care how old you are. I'm taking the mystery out of it for you so you'll know what it is. It's learning about life and enjoying it. And it's learning to learn in a way that you enjoy and that you can see meaning for, to have meaning in it. It's not just memorizing dates and knowing facts and jamming your head full of facts. Remember that poem that I read to you not long ago? And so I looked up again, and I had known this before, but I wanted to see if there had been any more. This was before the internet, in the olden days, when we used books. And the significance of the gold and the frankincense and myrrh was as little as I could find out about it from the Bible handbooks and the Bible dictionaries, was that the gold was represented Christ's kingliness and royalty, because royalty, you think of them as having gold, don't you? And but then when I looked it up and to see what more could be found about it, gold also would have been something given to someone to help them in their life's career, to set up their business, to set up their tools and the things that they needed to have, like for instance, a carpentry, or all the things that they would need to have their life's work, and or anything else. And also then there was frankincense. Now frankincense, I understand, was kind of a something that was used for I always thought of it as something to use for fragrance, but myrrh was also uh, frankincense and myrrh came from the same place. It was like the sap of a tree, and you know, I think of frankincense as something scented, and I have a little vial of it, and I used to, you know, teach my children with a frankincense and the myrrh, and I had a little bottle of each, and I would let them smell it. We would talk about it, and you know, our prayers are considered in the New Testament as an offering of fragrance to God, and so frankincense, I think, from what I could discover, and you can look it all up yourself and study it. And that's the one thing about homeschooling. You give them a little hint of something and then let them go with it and find out more. You don't have to stand there and be a one-person information book. You can just tell them some little thing and then they can look up more. But what I thought about was the frankincense was the fragrance that Christ would spread through his word. Now we think of a king, you know, I talked about the gold for the king, but he isn't a king like, he wasn't going to be a king like other kings where he was just a king over you, but a type of king of your heart because of his word. So we live by his words, not just thinking of him as kind of like a worldly king or an idol is a king, but his words and the fragrance that his words spread is kind of like a fragrance. It has an effect on people. It's like some people, when they come into your home, and they leave, they kind of leave an aura of their personality, and that's what the words of Christ are like. They're like a fragrance. And so when I think of frankincense, that's what I think of. But now myrrh, that was used for embalming, and of course it would predict his death. So there was gold, frankincense, myrrh, his kingliness, his ministry and effect on people, and then his death. But myrrh was also used. It's found out that it's great for wounds. And I remember when we did a study on sheep one time, the children and we did a study on sheep and shepherds, and myrrh was something that was used to soothe the wounds of sheep. They would get thorns and sticks and things in them, sometimes in their skin, and the shepherd would have to take this wonderful oil and put it and rub it on the sheep. And in a way, you know, Christ heals all of our spiritual wounds, and it's talked about how it's a if I could just read my handwriting, I could figure it out what all it was, but also was used for skin problems and for wounds and for medicine. So I think that that was a useful thing to do in the middle of the night, and I couldn't sleep. And then I looked up a few sayings, because sayings that we use still today that were based on history. And I looked up quite a few of them, but I'm only going to just read one of them to you, and it was called, I think there was another one time, Crossing the Rubicon. Okay, what does crossing the Rubicon mean? And the reason this is important in homeschooling, if you're homeschooling your children or you're letting me homeschool you, is because you're going to hear things like this, and you don't want your children to say, what do you mean by that? Because probably the person that said it and used the expression didn't know what it meant either, didn't know where it came from. Sorry for all that shaking, but it a lot of people will use a term like shenanigans, which that's all over America. I mean, I don't know anyone, I grew up with that term. I heard it all my life, and they're saying it even more in this political climate here in the U.S. Shenanigans, especially our president. He must be Irish, and but a lot of people will say something like that, like crossing the Rubicon or shenanigans, and your child who's homeschooled may say, well, what do you mean? Well, the person doesn't actually know the root of or the history of the expression, but they know what they mean. I mean, they know what they're trying to say. So crossing the Rubicon just means going beyond the point of return. But it was, Julius Caesar was I believe, governor in Italy sometime before Christ, and he had taken his army against the will of the Senate to an area called the Rubicon. It was a river, and the Senate had told him to come back, bring the army back, and he did not. He crossed the Rubicon anyway. And when he crossed it, he said, I have come to the point of no return, or something like that. So you can look that up too, all right, so that you can get a proper. Now, see, if I were teaching my children, I would just teach them just the tiniest bit about it, enough to make them curious, and then they would go and look up the entire story, because I couldn't stand there and tell them every single thought and every single detail about it. I'm not a walking history book, and I have a lot of other things to do, but then they would be stimulated to look it up because it made them very curious. And the history books that we had were very general. I liked A. Becca, and even the one that I've been reading to you called God and Government in Christian Perspective by A. Becca. They're good, but they're still very, very general. And that was all we could get at the time. So what I would do is I would make a statement like this, or a saying, and then we would go to a bookstore and try to find some book that might have had, we'd have to look up the history of Julius Caesar in order to find it, so we'd find many other things. But now, of course, if you wake up in the night and you want to look up things like that, you can. And the other thing was shenanigans. Now, I looked up a whole lot of things when I couldn't sleep, and one of them was shenanigans. And that just generally meant shifting things around and mixing things up and being up to no good. And we say it a lot. And so that's so you can pray, you can look up things if you wake up in the night. Another thing you can do is just get up and start doing something that to beautify your home, or making plans. That's another thing that's nice. And so I want to talk a little bit about, I want to read you some more poetry today, and I want to talk a little bit about people, dealing with people. And so now, when we come out of, before captivity, we had company. Now we're coming out of captivity, maybe, and you might have some company, or you might be company. And one thing that I noticed that I used to think that this only happened in the olden days, but I noticed today people don't know what to do with a coffee cup or a teacup, and they will set it on someone's nice book. And sometimes people have a coffee table and their books on it, or there may be a little end table and their books on it. And invariably somebody will set their teacup or their coffee cup on this book. And sometimes when I order from eBay or thrift books or something, someplace like that, the book will have or an older magazine or something, the book will have a stain on it from a coffee cup or a teacup. And I thought, oh, that's in the olden days. I remember when they used to do that. And that was before coasters were invented, and that was before you could, before people were aware of it. They just thought, well, just set it on this magazine, because they didn't want to ruin your wood on your coffee table with a hot cup of something or a cold glass of something. And so they would set it on a book. And they're still doing that, and I still look at books I have that were brand new when I got them, and I noticed that someone either in the family or outside of the family set something on. And I think that the best thing to do if you are entertaining and you're worried about that is just put all books away and only leave things out that they can set something on. I think we solve a lot of that just by eating at the table and drinking at the table, but that isn't always possible. Sometimes people find themselves in a larger group and there's not enough room around a table, and they will sit around a living room, but they will set their drinking vessels on something. And so I think you have to be very careful that there's no etiquette about it, but coffee cups on books and magazines, teacups on books and magazines, not a good idea. I don't know why no one has learned from it, except that not everyone is the same. And some people don't understand the value of books and nice magazines and nice reading material. They don't understand it. They look at them like maybe newspapers that people would just throw away, and so they don't think anything's wrong with setting something on it. But I thought I'd bring that up because the ladies that had come to see me were talking about it, and I thought that would be an interesting subject. So be prepared. Get your nice things out of the way that you don't want someone to set something on or get wet if you're going to have company. And one more thing before I move on to something else, and that is to make progress. You've got your daily work and your weekly work, but make progress in your house. Let's just go a little further and improve something that needs to be repaired or fixed or painted, and try to include that in your daily work. Now, every generation, the reason I talk about this is because in homeschooling, it was about life and how we should be thinking about life and how we should observe life and what we should live for. And you can learn a lot of dates, and you can learn history, and you can learn grammar and stuff, but it has to have a purpose. And your life's purpose is to be pleasing to your parents, pleasing to God, and have a nice home life. And those of you who have always wanted to have a nice family and a nice home life, you might start noticing that people want to mess that up. They want to say, oh, you have such a nice family, I'm going to see if I can get you guys to argue. I'm going to see if I can get you guys to differ. And then I'm going to say you're a divided family. And they'll go, this is real interesting, they will go to maybe a husband and ask him his opinion about something. And then they'll go to his wife and ask her opinion, and the two haven't had a chance to compare notes on this, and she'll say something, and they'll say, well, they don't agree. They're divided. Or they'll go to the children and they'll ask one of the children, what do you think about this, or do you think this or this? And the child, they don't have anything to hide, so they just say something. And then they'll ask the mom what she thinks, and she'll say, well, this is what I think. And they'll say, well, your children don't agree with you. You are a divided family. And this is how people work families. Now, one reason they do this is they're jealous if you have a pretty stable home and a nice family, and they want to make you like them where there's trouble. And that way they won't feel so bad. So they want you to fuss and fight. And this goes on even in homes where people are just getting along just fine. Someone, it could be a relative, it could be a friend, it could be a stranger, anybody like to make your children differ with you, or they'd like to make the husband and wife differ with each other. And they do that by asking questions or talking to them separately and then making notes. Or even in a group, they can try to get everybody to argue by talking back to everyone, and then pretty soon they've got them all arguing. And I've seen people work a group that way, or work a family that way. So I just wanted to warn you about that, and to be wise and to watch for that, and to inform your family that people do this, that this is what people will do to make it look like you're conflicting. And I was reminded of Elijah in 1 Kings 18:21, where he said to the people, "How long will you halt between two opinions?" Now, in the Hebrew, that word halt is like limp. So it reads something like this: how long will you limp between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal, then follow him. And the people did not answer. Now that's like going into a room where there's people that are differing or they're arguing. So you ask them, well, but do any of you believe this, or do any of you believe that? And they're all quiet. And that means that they're all traitors. They're all against you, because they won't answer. They won't answer because they're guilty and because they don't agree. And so he said, how long will you halt between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, and if Baal, then follow him. And the people did not answer. And when people don't answer, they're hiding something, and they're guilty of something. So you need to teach your children things like this, so that they learn to be able to kind of sense when people are setting them up for an opinion in order to throw them under the bus, or frame them, or make it look like they disagreed with someone else in the family. And these are hard things to explain to a group of people, but it'd be great to have a conversation with your family about the way people act. And so, how long will you halt between two opinions? And then also, Joshua was saying, choose this day who you will serve. And halting between two opinions and choosing, there's a problem going on in life, and that is that people have a confusion in their mind about how to choose between right and wrong. And so that's why they have to be told, okay, this is right and this is wrong. And you have to choose. You can't just limp between two opinions, trying to please both sides. And people that want to shame you or break up your family or make your family unhappy, they're happy to do that by creating opinions and getting everyone upset. So that's something that you might want to discuss with your family sometime. If you're homeschooling, this is one of the things we had to talk about. We had to talk about dealing with people. Now, sometimes people would be very critical of us because we would say, do you see what happened to that young man there when he rebelled against his father, and he decided to make a point by speeding away from the house in his car, and he crashed? People would say, oh, that's jealous, that's gossip. But you know, throughout the Bible, God gave examples of this, and the whole thing in the Old Testament, especially people who were in rebellion and what happened to them, that's not gossip, that's just a fact. And so sometimes you have to teach your children by looking at other people that have gotten into trouble and shown them you don't have to experience that. You can observe, and you don't have to do that. You don't have to suffer the calamity that this person had, because you could observe it. And so that is dealing with people, and that's my third part of my lesson today. So I'm going to read to you. Did I read to you the story of Constant Beauty? I'll read that another time. And this is by Edgar A. Guest, the poet of it's called America's Family Poet. And this is, and he wrote about life because he was a newspaper. He worked for a newspaper, and his job was to go find human interest stories or poems and put it in a little section. And that was probably the most popular section of newspapers in those days, the human interest and the poems and the stories. And so he started writing his own stories. I suppose he found, and writing his own poems. And I suppose he found it a lot more expedient to do that than to try to find them. So he wrote his own. And his poetry was mostly about the family, and particularly, I think, aimed at teaching sons but there were a lot of other things, and it was all about overcoming trials. And after the war, he was British, and he moved to America to work for this paper, and he stayed, and he knew that Americans would need to have a new mindset of success on what to do after trials. And so his poems were always upbeat, and I always thought that the most famous one was Somebody Said It Couldn't Be Done. A beautiful poem. And they're always very encouraging. So this is called In Time of Trial. Great poem for our day. Oh, I have fared through laughter 'neath skies of summer blue, and many an hour of mirth and joy I've danced and scampered through. But Lord, when joy was mine to know, I gave no thought to you. I've had my days of pleasure, and I've had my gold to spend, but when my purse was plump and full, I thought 'twould never end, and when I had no care to face, I didn't need a friend. I've whistled down the summer wind, I've sung a merry tune. We never think of winter's snow when we are deep in June, and no one dreams when pleasure calls that it will go so soon. But Lord, the skies are gray today, and I am deep in care, and I have need for help and strength my weight of grief to bear. And so, like many an erring son, I turn to thee in prayer. And you know, that is so true. When we are happy and the sun is out, we don't think about the people that are lonely, do we? I mean, we have our lonely time, and oh, it's just so stressful. We would just want to reach out to someone and then find out that they're not lonely, so they don't really feel it. They don't really care. But when we are doing well, we don't worry too much about it. And it's so true. It says, when joy was mine to know, I gave no thought to you. And it said, when I had no care to face, I didn't need a friend. It's interesting, isn't it? We don't have the need. We don't seem to have the need when we're full of success. And a good point to make, too. A reminder. So now he has a poem here called Bethlehem. No doubt they thought in Bethlehem the world would never hear of them. They had an inn where sometimes stayed the wandering caravans of trade, and near it was a stable kept wherein at night the cattle slept. But lost to splendor and renown, theirs was a little wayside town. One night a man and woman worn asked to be sheltered till the morn. The keeper of the inn replied, my every room is occupied. There is no space that I can spare. The man said, we must rest somewhere. What of the stable yonder, sir? There I can make a bed for her. Yes, the keeper said, go ahead. Toss down some straw and make a bed. No doubt he was surprised at morn to hear a baby had been born. The shepherds wandering from afar, guided to Bethlehem by a star, had come that little child to see, as if important he could be. The caravans of trade moved on, the great officials soon were gone, nor did it once occur to them that fame had come to Bethlehem. The poor innkeeper never knew he should be long remembered, too, because on that first Christmas morn 'twas in the stable Christ was born. And that is interesting that the innkeeper was mentioned in the Bible. Probably not know that everyone knows about him not having room in the inn. I thought that was interesting. So now I have another one here to read to you. I can find it. This is called Envy, and I may have read it to you before, but one of the problems of people who have nothing of any value to talk about is that they are only stimulated by what other people are doing. They're only thinking about watching somebody else, and then they have something to say about it. Or they'll listen to someone else say something, and then they will contradict it or object to it, because that's the only way they know how to do conversation. But envy will never enter a person's mind if they are busy with their own accomplishments, with things that they want to do. It's never bothered me if someone around me had a better home than the man's, or had a better car than mine, or just was able to travel the world, or anything like that. That's never bothered me, because I was so absorbed in the things that I had to do, And I think that's a thing when you're raising children and your home and you're homeschooling, to teach them against envy, because anytime they think someone got something that they didn't, you'll find out that they were better off in some way. Um, and of course, we don't envy people who have better life here on this earth because they have to pay more taxes. Envy. I wonder if the poppy shows the slightest envy of the rose, or if the pansy wastes its time regretting it cannot climb. Do blossoms of a yellow hue complain because they are not blue? Do birds that God designed to sing envy the wild duck's fleeter wing? And does the sparrow sadly mourn because he was not goldfish born? I cannot say, but fancy not, each seems contented with his lot. 'Tis only man who thinks that he some other man would rather be. Okay, so now I want to finish by reading a poem called Courage. I may have read this to you before, but courage is also a subject that we can teach in homeschool, to look up everything you know, the meaning of the word, and give an example of what courage would be and how you can create it in your own life. Okay. This is courage, to remain brave and patient under pain, cool and calm and firm to stay in the presence of dismay, not to flinch when foes attack, even though you're beaten back, still to cling to what is right when the wrong possesses might. This is courage to be true to the best man see in you, to remember tempest tossed, not to whimper all is lost, but to battle to the end while you still have strength to spin, not to cry that hope is gone when you've life to carry on. This is courage, to endure hurt and loss you cannot cure, patiently and undismayed, facing life still unafraid, glad to live and glad to take bravely for your children's sake burdens that they would have to bear if you fled and ceased to care. And that is one thing we learn about having a family, is that when one of them, and whether it's the father, the mother, one of the children, decide they don't want to be part of the family anymore, and they're just going to shirk their work and, not worry about it, the effect they have is like a stage play. When you're on a stage and you have the performers, and you have the lead performer, and you have the backup one, and you have the second one, and they're all putting on a story on a stage, and then the lead performer decides they don't want to do it anymore, and they quit, or some of the others quit. It affects the others in the way that they're doing their job. And so it is at home. One person decides they don't really care about the rest of the family, they're just going to shirk their duties. It's going to affect everyone else, and in a bad way. And so the last words of that was, burdens they would have to bear if you fled and ceased to care. So that's really important, because you can mentally check out, even though you're in your house. You can mentally check out and think, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to, I don't want to, I'm just going to make everybody take care of themselves. I'm not going to even bother anymore. It affects them. And because you probably know you may have had things like that happen to you in your past, and you have to think about what you do and how it affects other people. It's like a ripple in the water when a rock is thrown in. And there is a poem, if I could find it, about the rock that's thrown in the water and how these ripples start in the middle of the lake, and then come out towards you, and how it affects you, how everything we do is like a ripple in the water, and how it affects other people. Okay, this is called Missed Opportunities. We all have that, don't we? Don't we all have that regret that we weren't alert and we missed opportunities? I have often thought of that, and that might be what wakes me up once in a while, is to pray to God to restore those wasted years and to compensate you for the time that you wasted. So missed opportunities. Some walk so thickly wrapped in self and all their petty care, they never see a blossoming tree, and wholly unaware of cardinal or throstle's song, they trudge their dreary way along. So muffled up in sordid things and hopes for gain are they never know that violets grow a few short miles away, and never guess the deep woods hold entrancing pleasures, manifold. They hear the clink of gold against coin, tall buildings cold they see, but miss the mirth which floods the earth, as if joy couldn't be, and never hear along the way the curious speeches strangers say. Who stays within the narrow rut, carved deep by strife and care, will travel far where roses are, and never know they're there. For self is like a prison wall, which makes the world seem harsh and small. You know, I have to tell you an adventure that I had recently, or we had, um, talking about the things that poems said, we don't hear the things that strangers say. And because, we've got the big media around us and we hear everything everyone says that's out there that's broadcasting it worldwide. But what about the things that strangers say? It's so interesting. I was sitting here looking out the window and in the manse, and which is just there's a little path to the church building, and I was sitting here looking out the window, and there was a bicycle, and it was a very unusual bicycle. It was very, very long, and it was parked between the shed and the church building, and there was no one there, but the bicycle was laden with interesting things. There was a tent and a sleeping bag and a food supply and all kinds of things, and it was a fairly nice bike. It wasn't run down or anything. And then the neighbor called and said that there was a woman walking around outside on the church property and wanted me to know that her bike was parked there. And of course, we've been involved in some sad situations with strangers that were up to no good. And so we were pretty cautious about this. And Mr. S and I went over and found her, and she was walking around outside, and she wanted to know if she could pitch her tent in a little area outside that was kind of away from the wind, in between the church building and where there was more sheltered outside. But the weather had got really bad and really, really cold, and it was said that it might snow here, and I had felt a few flakes of it, but it was cold. And so when Mr. and S and I found her, we asked her what could we do for her, and she said, could she stay there? Could she pitch her tent? And we said no, she could not, because it was going to be very cold. But we invited her to bring her bicycle up the ramp into the hallway of the fellowship room of the church building, where there was a kitchen and there's a bathroom, and she could stay there. So we asked her, do you need food? Do you need anything like that? Could I bring her over something to eat? She didn't want anything. She said no, she didn't want anything. So she brought her bike in, and then and I visited with her a little bit, but I didn't want to get too, I didn't want to invade her privacy. So I asked her, would you like something to eat? And she said, no, I have my own food. And of course, I wear these old boots that are torn, and because they're comfortable, and the outside is all torn up and scratched, and the zipper doesn't work, and I wear them because I like them, and they're nice on the inside. And I wasn't dressed really well, so when she saw me, she must have seen my footwear and thought that she didn't want to take anything. So we showed her where she could sleep, and there was a pew there that she could put some cushions on and sleep there, and we turned the heat up for her. And I asked her several times, was there anything she needed or anything she wanted? And I have these rooms in my house when the descendants are not filling them. They were empty, so I asked her, would she like to come over to the house and choose one of these rooms to sleep in? And she didn't want to. She wanted to stay there. So I went over the next day, and I had to lock her in, because you can get out, but you can't get back in. And I said, we can't leave the church building open all night. We have to lock you in. So when I went over there, I said, I have to lock you in. And she didn't mind at all, but I said, you can get out, but you have to put something in front of the door so you can get back in. she didn't mind at all. So I kind of left her alone, and the next day I went over there and talked to her a little bit, and she had a very thick foreign accent, and so we're talking about different things, and I asked her where she was from, and it turned out she was from Italy, and she was riding a special, I guess you would say, test bicycle that some company had put out, and was going some of the older roads, the more country roads, and um, some kind of a job she had. And anyway, I didn't want to, inquire too much, and because I know what it's like, to have every little detail of your life questioned. So I sat over there and talked to her for a while and showed her where the tea kettle was and how she could, how I had an automatic shut off and everything. And I said, I'm just over here at the house. Just let me know what you need. She didn't ask me for my phone number or anything. And I went over there the next day and unlocked the door to talk to her. And she had been up and around, and she had mopped the hallway. She had cleaned out the men's bathroom. She'd cleaned the women's bathroom, and she was starting in the kitchen. And so she asked for a vacuum cleaner. I forgot to take the vacuum cleaner over to her, but she stayed 5 days, and when she left, I looked in the kitchen cupboard because we were going to have a potluck, and there were some dishes and stuff I needed to get out and set out, and there was a map in there on where the mice had been getting in, where she'd found holes where the mice had been getting in, because every church building has mice, field mice especially, and then she had a map of where she had set out all the mouse traps so that we could check the traps left there. But in the days that she was there, and every time I went over there, she always insisted that she had her own food, but I never saw any sign of her having eaten anything. So I did start taking meals over to her, but she wouldn't come over to see me. I thought it was because of the way I was dressed. She thought that she might cost me something, but her and I got to talking about wool, and she asked me if I had a sock, and she took off her left foot. She took the sock off her left foot, and the sock was just threadbare. And so I went home, and I had a couple pairs of socks that I had gotten in Alaska that were wool, and that I had never seen anywhere else. And we were talking about, and I took the socks to her, and I made her take the whole pair because I don't need just one sock. So she put those socks on, and she breathed like she had hit a cushion. She said, "Oh," when she put those socks on. And we got to talking about these wool socks and how they were made, and I was trying to tell her about these people that were shepherds in America from that took care of sheep, and they were especially in New Mexico and in the olden days, and I had seen them in the fields back in the 60s, and they were still dressed in the way they dressed, in their kind of costumes, and they were were they the Basques or the Basques? And she said that in Italy, where she was from, they're called Vasques with a V and spelled with a Q. And so she was talking to me quite a bit about different places in Europe, and I had been to some of those places, so I thought that was very interesting. And so I asked her several times if she needed anything, and so she handed me her bag of laundry and asked me to go do her laundry. And I again asked her to come over, but she didn't want to. And I suppose, if you're traveling and you don't want to get people too familiar with you, or you just like your privacy. She didn't seem to mind being alone over there. But after she left, I looked, and I'm still finding things that she did over there in the church kitchen, and I have to come to the conclusion that she worked for a high-end hotel, because when I opened a drawer and there were the dish towels, they were layered in such a way that it was done professionally, and she had put the coffee makers on trays with all the stuff around them that you would need, and she had cleaned the fridge, she had cleaned the windows, she had and of course every time she had handed me a bag of rags or dish towels to wash, they were black, and I wondered why. And then I remembered that we had those that smoke. Remember out here in Oregon when all the forests caught fire and there was smoke even in my house? I'm still wiping it up off of things, the soot. And so I had forgotten that we had not cleaned. Of course, you can't see it right away, but that was why all the rags were black. And so this woman had such an effect. It was so interesting to talk to her, and it had such an effect on me that I really prayed for her when she left, because it would be nice to. And I told her, you know, if you don't want to keep traveling and you need a place to go, you be sure and come back, okay? But she didn't leave me any information. It was a big mystery. It was just a big mystery. But every time I go over there, and it's been a while since I've seen her, I see some sign that she was there, and it was always neat. It was always tidy. So, you know, in the church kitchen, we have stacks of paper plates from different seasons. We'll have summer plates that have paper plates that have flowers on them, and we'll have the cups that go with them, and kind of like party plates. And then we'll have the ones that look wintry, and they have a picture of a truck on them, and snowflakes. And we just stacked the plates up in one place and the cups up in another place, and she had organized them according to season in that. And she'd only been there 4 days, and I'm telling you, she whipped that place into shape. And she told me before she left, she said, you're just going to, she said, Mr. S is a very nice person. He's just so mild and he's so nice, but he really needs to get tough with those mice. So I wanted you to hear about my little adventure, and I'm a captive. I've been in captivity since July, and still I had an adventure. So ladies, I hope that you got quite a bit done while you work. You can always go and explore how more ideas about homemaking and housekeeping. I didn't talk too much about that here, but the purpose was that you'd have something to listen to while you worked, and also to take some of the mystery out of homeschooling. I don't want to, I've got all this material and all these things that one thing about homeschooling is you keep looking up things even after the children are gone. You start to, because I taught them when you learn something, you go look something up about it, or you look up a meaning, or you just keep exploring it. And so I'm still in that habit, and they're busy teaching their own children right now. So I decided that I would use some of my information and teach you, take the mystery out of it. So maybe you'll get a certificate someday. So ladies, until next time, I hope you have a blessed day, and I hope you get a lot done, and that you have a lovely week this week. And I hope to talk to you again soon. Bye.